Points. Hey, what is happening? Welcome to another episode of the Broad Points Podcast. I am your host, the broad that points, the broad with the points. It's me, Tyler, the lady. Welcome to episode 23 of the Broad Points Podcast. To start off today, I'm going to read you a poem that I wrote. It's called Shoes. Trapped inside the walls they call safety, protected from penetration of my purity, hidden away from my own strength. More is less pain. Less is more resilience. One man's sanctuary, another's prison. That is a poem about minimalist shoes. I personally, myself, switched over to minimalist shoes. I'm not gonna lie, dabble still in the regular, societally acceptable footwear, but these days, what I really love wearing around anywhere that I can are my Xero shoes. And that's Xero with an X. Why? Because they're edgy. It's a minimalist shoe company, actually, out of Colorado. And I wrote this poem because I started wearing these shoes and I noticed that my feet started to become stronger. I really started to be able to feel my toes separating and having the room to move and feel my foot flex naturally and really ground myself when I'm wearing shoes. You know, it was great. And I'm obviously very passionate about this just on my own. Now, I also have a Xero affiliate link, you guys. What that means is that if you want to try out a pair of Xeros for yourself, well, golly, you sure as heck can. And you can use my link. I have a link. It is xeroshoes.com/go/Tyler the Lady. Seriously though, you guys, they have so many different options. I have, my adventure sandal Xeros. I have my day-to-day walkers. I usually do about 3 miles in the morning. I love my Xero Prios for that. I just wore my slip-on Dylans to a couple different concerts. We'll get into that. But seriously, I am a firm believer in, the less we use something, the less we do something, the less we're going to be able to do. The less we're going to have connection, right, with that muscle memory, if it's a muscle or, if it's lyrics to the song. The less you sing that song, the less you're going to remember it, I promise you. So I really feel like by having we'll call it less crutches, less excuses for myself personally, I'm building trust with myself. I'm building strength and I'm allowing my self-growth, my self-care to take precedent over the other things in my life, like spending hundreds of dollars on shoes that have crazy padding. And that padding wears down, or that padding isn't as supportive as it needs to be, right? I've heard people who are wearing these like giant soled shoes and they're like running and then their knee blows out and they're like, why? Oh, because you had no cushion, like supportive cushion in your shoe? No way. It's bananas. It's absolutely a wild world out there, but whatever your body is telling you to do, check in. Can you feel it? Can you hear it? What's going on with it? If it's telling you you want more soul, then maybe 0 isn't the right shoe for you. But hey, I'm digging it. I'm really enjoying my journey. And if you want to check it out for yourself, go ahead and check out that link. zeroshoes.com/go/Tyler the Lady. Now, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the fundamental phrase for the week. Why? Because I can't believe how fitting it is, and I'm so excited to share it because it's a controversial one. Because people like to spin things all sorts of different ways, and today I'm going to share with you my perspective on it. The fundamental phrase for the week is, the only constant is change. The only constant, the only thing that's going to be consistent in your life is change. No matter how hard we may try to keep to a routine or a regimen or whatever, you start to, if you're a child, you outgrow your clothes, right? Maybe you outgrow a type of music that you like. Maybe you outgrow a group of people or a type of comedy or a type of art or movie that you used to enjoy. You outgrow it. Maybe a series that you've loved for 17 seasons is now going to have a new person in it. Things can't always stay the same. We can't just continue to follow along in the same thing over and over again. One, that would be a really boring existence. But two, the universe is making sure that that does not happen. And I understand how that can be a scary thing. I understand how it can seem overwhelming that the only constant in this world is that it's always going to be changing. Where I find the power in this fundamental phrase is actually knowing that I control my variables, right? And for me, I'm thinking of exercise in this moment. What a great example for the only constant in this life is change, because I personally have not stuck to a consistent exercise regimen, maybe my entire life. I think I've been switching it up my whole entire life, and it hasn't always been my choice, right? Growing up in Washington, it was rainy a lot of days. There's a lot of days when you can't go outside. So if you wanted to go outside and go for a sunny run and feel the sun on your skin, well, that's just not happening. Right? Or I worked in Alaska too, and when it's super windy, when it's snowing, no way am I going to go for a run outside. I did see some people do it, and like, kudos to you if that's the thing that you do. I switched it up, right? Sometimes I'll do a hike. Sometimes I'll ride a bike. I actually would love an adult trike if anybody knows someone that's getting rid of one. But really, I mean, it just depends on what's accessible to me in the moment and what also fits my needs. There was a point in my life where I started to, instead of calling stuff a routine, I needed a morning routine, I started to call it a self-love practice. Because it just allowed for a little bit more fluidity. It allowed for me to really think outside of the box. Right? When I'm exercising, what am I doing there? Movement was what came up for me, right? Strengthening myself, moving. And so then it just turned into other ways of how can I insert movement into my life? And that has trickled down into some different ways. I mean, in Alaska, like I said, what was accessible, there was a gym. I was able to do some running once I joined the gym. And they had an indoor track, which was not even a quarter of a mile, but you could run around in there. And, that is one option of things to do. But before I joined the gym, before I even went there to spend the dollars, there was a little exercise trampoline that was left over in the apartment by one of my previous coworkers. And so, in addition to that, actually, I should start with, the heater didn't always work in Alaska. So my brain, out of the box thinking, right? The only constant is change. I need to get movement. I also need to get some heat, but not forever heat, because I hate it when it's hot and I sleep. I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I like a cold sleep. I like a cool sleep. And so instead of trying to figure out how to turn on and off this heater, which I could never tell if it was on or off, I decided that anytime I was cold, I would just jump on the trampoline. I was really just killing two birds with one stone, right? There's so many different ways to do things. There's so many different ways to accomplish our needs, to accomplish some of these things that maybe we see so straightforward, that we see so literally. For me, just changing that language, getting out of the routine of things and switching over, right? Instead of what am I doing in the morning? Gosh, there's so much stigma even around the word morning. People are like, oh, I hate the morning. And then throw in a Monday. Oh gosh, people go through the roof. But instead, it's like, what am I focusing on? Actually, I'm working on my self-love this morning. How can I love myself? And how can I do it in a way that isn't so strict that it makes me not want to do it at all? Right? People think about like going cold turkey from something and just like going full in. I'm like 100% in on. No. It's all about sustainable growth. Right? Sustainable change. Things that we can do just one step at a time, one bite at a time. And by allowing for that ebb and flow of the universe, right? The weather, the whatever we want to call it in that moment, we can still find fulfillment without it having to be the exact way in which we always receive it. And just even by thinking of that, I find myself finding peace amidst the chaos. It's like, okay, everything else may be changing around me, but I can show up and I can find that underlying thing. What am I here for? By finding peace amidst the chaos, I find comfort in the consistency. It's always going to be changing. That's consistent. If nothing, like, I can't promise you that I'm going to be able to show up every single day the exact same way. But what I could tell you is that the world is always going to be changing. And I do find comfort in that consistency, because you're always going to be acquiring strength and wisdom. And once we recognize that change is always going to happen, we can just focus on, I'm going to call those underlying things that we want, goals. Because that's what they are. And when we can block out the excuses and we can say that our goals are greater than our excuses, I have goals. That's why I'm doing it. Why? Because I have goals. Then we're able to influence the change. We're able to reach our goals because we're able to be persistent with them, to say that come hell or high water, I'm getting there. Wherever that is for you, wherever that is for me in this moment, right? We're getting there. We will get there. We just have to stay consistent. The same way that change is going to stay consistent, we have to stay consistent. And I mentioned it earlier, Now I'm going to get into it. I've seen so many good concerts recently, and one of them was Linkin Park. So, R.I.P. Chester Bennington. You know, I mad respect to him and all that he accomplished in his life. I was so sad when he passed away. Linkin Park also did exist before Chester. So, like, we have to, like, keep everything in perspective here, guys, when it comes as far as criticism, because now they're back. They've been on a hiatus ever since Chester passed away, and there have been whispers. There had been whispers around that they were going to come back and that they were going to have a female vocalist replace Chester or sing in his spot. They're not replacing him. No one can ever replace him, ever, right? That's like, it's its own thing. However, Linkin Park is a project. Linkin Park is always changing. It was there before Chester. It's here after too. And it can evolve. Why? Because the only constant is change in this life. And so I know that there was some skepticism out there from, you know, a variety of their fan base. I know there was also a lot of acceptance. And for me, having this fundamental phrase in my mind, the only constant is change, you guys. All I can do is see what's there now. All I can do is have an open mind and be willing to experience what's in front of me. And holy crap, we drove out to LA on Wednesday to go see Linkin Park at the Forum, and wow, Emily Armstrong just has an amazing voice. I myself, you know, I love to scream and do a little bit of singing, so it was super fun to get to hear her take on it. As a part of the audience, you know, they prefaced the whole show by saying, Emily is not Chester. You are Chester. And I mean, Matt and I were joking for like years before this happened that we should start a Linkin Park cover band and I would sing Chester's part. So I'm like dialed in for this. I'm like ready for this. I'm like, this is what we've trained for. It was amazing. I never thought in a million years I would have been able to experience that, and to be on the rail. You know, we got there in time for them. We saw like the end of Grand Sunset. I'm sure that would have been really awesome to see live, but we made it just in time for Linkin Park, and I wiggled my way up onto the rail just very politely. I'm never mean. I'm never going to like push my way anywhere, but just kind of like I'm talking, I'm looking around, I'm laughing, and then bam, boom, 2 spots on the rail open up, one for me and one for Matt. And so we're just front row for just this nostalgic performance, this electric performance. Like, I had the best time. The energy there was incredible to hear everybody singing. It was awesome to be a part of. I'm so happy to be a part of, and I'm so happy that I went there with an open mind and have just been willing to accept change in my life, because I feel like, for me personally, not having to butt heads with every single thing that doesn't go my way has released a lot of pressure from this little teapot, you guys. I don't know if you're familiar with the I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here's my handle, here's my spout. When I get all steamed up, hear me shout, tip me over and pour me out. Gosh. So relatable. I just love that all the time in my life. It just comes up. And so, amazing performance. I have to say, never give up on your dreams. Never give up on something that you think isn't going to happen in your lifetime. Just stay focused on what you want, because anything can happen. You can reach your goals. You can do it. And hey, you know what else you can do? You can follow me. You can like, you can rate, you can review, you can subscribe to this here podcast. Where? Where, you ask? At Broad Points or at Tyler the Lady. And if you want to email me, well, hey, partner, you sure as heck can. broadpointspodcast@gmail.com. And one more time with that fundamental phrase for the week: the only constant is change.